Hello, I'm Lucasfilm's Kristin Baver, host of This Week in Star Wars. Welcome to New York Comic Con's Metaverse and the Lucasfilm Publishing Panel. We've got some great guests to talk about books from a galaxy far, far away, so allow me, without further ado, to introduce Zoraida Cordova, Phil Szostak, Amy Ratcliffe, Katie Cook, Preetei Chhibber, and Daniel José Older. Seems like the Star Wars writers have become a big family with a lot of you guys working together, supporting one another on social media, and at times even contributing to the same format. So I think to start us off, Preetei and Zoraida, I'd love for you both to talk a little bit more about your contributions to Star Wars: The Clone Wars Stories of Light and Dark, since you both came at it from conflicting sides. Preetei, I believe you wrote on the light side, and Zoraida, you wrote on the dark side. So true or false? These two sides are also in line with your personalities.
No.
False. I wish.
I was expecting a true from at least one of you. All right.
I definitely think I'm more light side, but I enjoy venturing into the dark side a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm definitely more light side, but there's just so much fun to be had on the dark side.
All right. So you guys kind of like switch sides. This is interesting. Now, Preetei, you wrote a retelling of the Clone Wars episode Hostage Crisis, and Zoraida, you wrote a retelling of Bounty. What drew you to each story, and how did you bring something new to the retelling of these classic Clone Wars episodes?
So I got to write from the perspective of Ventress, who is one of my favorite characters in the Clone Wars and in the Star Wars universe in general. And I think that I wanted to see her sadness and her trauma that she had after basically the murder of her entire sisterhood, and what happens now that she's alone in the galaxy for the first time, and she's been used as a weapon, but now she's going to remind herself that she has never been a weapon. You know, she can wield herself, and being in her mind was really refreshing, because I get to sort of think about a character as a survivalist instead of somebody who's just trying to do good because that's what the good guys do. And I really love her in general. She's a very complicated character, and this is one of the best episodes in the Clone Wars.
Did you get to choose this, Zoraida?
I did.
I think I came at it from a very similar perspective in that I just love the tragedy of it and just how deeply, deeply sad it is. But then I also wanted to pick an episode that highlighted a moment of happiness, which sounds weird. It's such a kind of anxiety-inducing episode, but I love the romance between Anakin and Padme so much. And I love Clone Wars because we get to see that relationship building in a way that the films kind of hop over. And so it was a great moment to be able to bring the romance to it, but also like seed some of that really scary foreshadowing in the way Anakin thinks about Padme.
Now, of all the Anakin-centric episodes, why Hostage Crisis?
Because I think it really brings the romance front and center, and you get to see a lot of sweetness, but also with that tinge of like, oh, this is going to be bad later.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of foreshadowing happening in that whole series. Oh, and now this isn't the only anthology that we have coming out. Let's talk a little bit about From a Certain Point of View, The Empire Strikes Back, which is out this November. Raise your hands if you've contributed to this anthology. Oh, so many hands. All right. Amy, we're going to start with you. Now, this was your first original fiction for a galaxy far, far away. What was it like taking those first steps into that larger world?
Scary as all get out. And to the point when I was asked about it, I was like, are you sure? You know, I've mostly written nonfiction, right? And so it was really interesting to get to explore a different side of going from writing nonfiction books and posts and articles about Star Wars to getting into the story and kind of having that moment. My favorite is like, I realized like I can make up things. Like I can check with you to make sure it's okay, but I can just make a character name and like I can do like the power was I'm telling a lot about my personality right now, but mostly I was just excited and overwhelmed, but like in a really good, challenging way.
So what you're saying is you had unlimited power, because that's what I heard. Yes. Okay. Now we found our dark sider. This is good. I really thought it was going to be you, Zoraida, but it was Amy all along. Who knew?
Quiet one.
She's the Phantom Menace. Daniel, I really want to ask you about the High Republic, but for right now, I'll try and behave myself. You also contributed to this anthology. So what can you tell us about your story in From a Certain Point of View?
I had such a good time writing it. It's about Zuckuss and Forlom, who are obviously the main heroes of Empire Strikes Back and everybody's
Obviously.
Favorite. I felt what a great honor to, take on the most important characters in that movie. I love that scene so much. It's such a tiny little moment. We get such a big glimpse of the larger galaxy just from that moment. And so, and I just love in general, like Star Wars underworld stuff is like one of my happy places. And then Zuckuss, refers to himself in the third person. How could anyone not want to write a character that does that? That is the coolest character trait ever. So I had a really good time writing it. It takes place in a diner that appears in Last Shot with some of my favorite original characters from Last Shot, and lots of gangland heroics and journalism involved.
All right. And Zoraida, you also contributed to this anthology. Did you have to switch gears when you were talking about The Empire Strikes Back versus in your approach to writing Ventress for the Clone Wars anthology?
I did have to switch gears a little bit. Since Daniel said his character, are we allowed to say ours? In the Clone Wars, Boba Fett is a kid in Bounty, and in Empire Strikes Back, he's a grown adult. And so I get to dive into, there's something about masked characters that is really fascinating to me, specifically like the Mandalorian. And so working on this piece, I love, like Daniel said, the underbelly of the Star Wars galaxy and what that looks like. And switching gears is mostly an audience thing. I'm always aware of the perspective that I'm writing from, whether it's for teens and for children, like in my novel and in Clone Wars. But for Empire Strikes Back, this book is for everybody. So I wanted to be conscious of that and make sure that I really dove into Boba's character and how I imagine his thought process goes.
What's one new thing you learned about Boba Fett by writing this story?
I know that he's the man, but I don't even know if that's new or not.
I love it. That's what you took away from his thought process. You were like, all right, I'm Boba Fett. I'm the man. Okay.
I'm the man. You see it in his entrance in every comic book. It's just like, and now I'm here. You're welcome.
I love it. All right. And Katie, you also contributed to the anthology. Was the process any different to write this short story in the realm of The Empire Strikes Back versus your contributions to some of the younger fiction that you've written?
Yes and no. I actually did a comic for mine. So it's not just written out because I'm a writer and an artist. And I think it says a lot about me that they were like, take any part of Empire and do what you want. Make your own canon. And I picked the dragon snake that tries to eat R2 on Dagobah. And how like an X-wing falling on him just like ruins his day. And that's why he's upset. And
right.
that really fits in with basically what I normally do in the Star Wars universe, which is gleefully poking at it while still keeping it charming and in universe. But it was just this moment of like, oh, I get to do anything. And it was like, I'm going to do the dragon snake. And there's an editor on the other end of that email going, okay.
Well, I look forward to seeing your interpretation in comic form. That is not what I was expecting. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about everyone's favorite child, the child. Yes. Who's joining our panel now with The Art of the Mandalorian. Phil, before we get started and talk about your writing work, can you tell us a little bit about your day job at Lucasfilm?
Sure. I am the creative art manager at Lucasfilm, which as a title doesn't really tell you a whole lot. Like I always have to give this caveat when I talk about my day job, creative art manager. What does that mean? So a lot of what I do is research for Doug Chang's Lucasfilm art department, which I'm a part of. And I also do research for our live action productions, including The Mandalorian. That includes, pulling, if they have any questions about Star Wars, pulling Star Wars concept art or reference photos. and including doing research for, research with like real world things, if there's anything that they want to reference, or things from art history. And I have a library, well, not really a library, but a ton of books on bookshelves that surround my desk. So the artists can come over and grab books if they want, looking for any kind of inspiration. I also share what's going on with the rest of the company with the art department. So I'm in a lot of meetings that the art department, don't have time or too busy to be a part of. And I also give a lot of notes on art for the publishing department at Lucasfilm. So that's including like cover art or comic book interiors or interior art. And I also share a lot of my behind the scenes expertise on like the history of Lucasfilm or the history of the making of Star Wars films for those books. So yeah, it's a very multifaceted little job I have.
Also, it's not a library unless it's organized by Dewey Decimal System. I'm laying down that decree right now.
It's definitely not organized in any fashion. It's kind of a hodgepodge. But...
Although speaking of personal libraries, I think anyone who has any of the art of books on their bookshelf is familiar with your work, since you've written all of the art books for the entire sequel trilogy saga. So can you tell us a little bit about how the art of the Mandalorian differs from those other books that we might be more familiar with?
Sure. Definitely had a lot more ground to cover in a book that was going to be the same size, as any of the other ones. So I actually looked this up, and it's like 5 hours and 23 minutes of Star Wars, as opposed to the usual 2.5 hours. So kind of cramming all that content into a single book was definitely a challenge. But what really worked in my favor for this book was how efficient the art department and Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni's approval process was. So for each individual design, there wasn't like a ton of iteration because we were, the art department, and myself included, just kind of like time-wise, we're really up against it. So there were not a ton of iterations per design, and Jon and Dave were really decisive and knew exactly what they wanted going in. Another big difference was I really wanted to show Jon and Dave's kind of journey to making The Mandalorian, which is something I don't often, have time to or I'm able to cover in the previous books. So yeah, in that process, so that journey for Jon and Dave and how they kind of crossed paths and joined forces effectively to make The Mandalorian, I felt was as fascinating as the making of the show itself.
Now, with a book that's so jam-packed with really cool concept art, can you pare it down to one piece of concept art from the art of The Mandalorian that to you just best encapsulates the entire series?
Actually, the first one that just jumped to mind was a piece by Kristin Alsman. And it's Din Djarin, the Mandalorian, as a child being held by the Mandalorian who rescues him. But we're seeing the back of the Mandalorian and Din Djarin's, as a child, his face over the shoulder of that Mandalorian who's rescuing him. And he's got and you can see the fire all around them, the city or wherever Din Djarin is from is burning, and, the battle droids have just come through. And he's got tears in his eyes, and it's just a really emotional piece. And this piece actually was not in the credits for the show. So, but yeah, it's a really beautiful piece, and really kind of, I think it encapsulates the show because it shows that Din Djarin, when he was young, needed to be rescued and in the same way that the child does in the present day. So I think that's the piece that really, and I made it in the book a 2-page spread because I just felt like it was that important and really kind of summarizes kind of the emotion of the show.
All right, that is a good answer, because I thought you were just going to say the child, and that was going to be it. But that was way more
so ready. I was so ready, but that answer was so much better than any really terrible humor deserves.
It was, though. It wrecked me. I was like, I don't know if I needed that picture of little baby Mando in my head. But,
And the best was watching Preetei and Amy both be like, "What?" during that description. So I was like, I can't even come for you on this because, that's a really great answer. All right, well done. Now, the Art of the Mandalorian is not the only art of book that we have coming out. Amy, you're writing The Art of Galaxy's Edge, when readers will get a chance to peek behind the curtain at the inner workings of the usually secretive team at Disney Imagineering. So what was that like for you as both a writer and as a fan?
It was a lot of this all the time, just because I couldn't contain my excitement, because my fandom, like Disney Park, Star Wars, that's almost a complete overlap on the Venn diagram. And I really respect Walt Disney Imagineering, because when they do anything, whether it's a whole land like Galaxy's Edge, a restaurant, an attraction, obviously, they really think about the backstory and they go down to every little detail. So getting to discuss those kind of details and how they research and all the minute things they consider with a bunch of Imagineers, it was just a constant, usually like half the time, maybe 75% of the time, pretty chill when I talk to people about that kind of thing. But the whole time inside, like, I don't know if Margaret Carrison, she's a managing story editor at Imagineering, and worked on Galaxy's Edge and is just incredible. And I admire her so much. I think she's so cool and talented, and her job is so cool. So anyway, the whole time we're talking, I was interviewing her. I'm at this level, and inside I'm just like, this is amazing. You're awesome. So the interviews for this book were a delight. And of course, Phil has set an amazing precedent with his books for me to reference and be inspired by. So thank you.
Thank you.
Just and one more cool thing about Imagineering is they also generate a ton of art for everything, and that we don't often get to see as the public. So getting to see, just as Doug Chang told me, because they work closely with Lucasfilm, he thinks as much as they like generated for Galaxy's Edge, like 3 feature films worth of content to go through, is pretty awesome.
Also, I'm getting now a Master and Apprentice vibe from you, Amy, and you, Phil, and that's concerning me, considering the whole unlimited power thing from before. So we're just going to gloss over that.
Look out.
It's a little worrisome, but yeah.
The rule of 2.
Amy, oh man, everybody else duck and cover. Amy, was there anything that really surprised you about how Imagineering approached the creations of these lands? Like, it strikes me that everybody involved in the story process and in the fabrication and the engineering is using that Star Wars playbook of, get into the nitty gritty of the details, make sure that if there's an exhaust port here, what it goes to, things of that nature. So, was there anything that you found really surprising about their approach?
It was actually very much that kind of getting into detail, because of course, everyone I spoke with, from whether they were designing graphics for signs or working on Smuggler's Run or Rise of the Resistance, they all had connections to Star Wars, all talked about tying into the look and motifs of Star Wars. But the things I surprised me and that I just ate up is learning, of course, they have the market and there are walls there, and they want Black Spire Outpost to reflect thousands of years of history. So they really, when they construct a wall, it's not like, hey, let's just make it look weathered and cool. It's, what if this has been damaged at some point and rebuilt? What if maybe a vendor moved their car too close and it crumbled? What if it rained? To the point, what if animals, pack animals, have gone by here and their fur has left oils on this corner where they turn, and how would that look? So, but it's that, but for everything in the land, from the spires to the toilets. So those kind of, I took it right to the toilet.
Well, and I think it's amazing, to your point, the refreshers or the toilets, for us. But when you first step into Galaxy's Edge and you go to the bathroom, I remember coming out and being like, you got to go in here. It's amazing. And to have that level of detail that even the bathroom is a stop that you must make while you're there is just fascinating. Now, Amy, you're also keeping busy by writing another book for us, The Jedi Mind, which is out this November. Now, this is a mindfulness book, which I think we can all really relate to right now because we need a little bit of centering. Can you tell us how you approached this book and what fans can expect from the story?
Yeah, absolutely. As you can probably tell, I operate at a level up here a lot. So I'm very relatable to 3PO as far as just being anxious about things and being worked up. So writing this book was very relaxing, and researching it and digging into incredible teachings by a Buddhist monk named Thich Nhat Hanh, who I learned a ton about mindfulness from. It's a gift, and it's really, I want fans to know that mindfulness is very much about being in the moment. It's not about zoning out. It's not just meditation. And it was important to me when we talked about this book and the way that, though mindfulness doesn't exist by that name in the Star Wars universe, the Force and the way the Jedi talk about the Force, and even characters like Chirrut talk about the Force, can connect to mindfulness. So I really wanted to highlight that connection and have small practices people can try out to see if mindfulness is for them. And I hope that it helps somebody, whether it's through meditation, which is my favorite way to practice mindfulness, or whether it's through taking mindful walks, or just kind of doing body scans and or breathing exercises to help you just be in the here and now. And it's not about at all toxic positivity, because you can't love and light your way out of everything. And I think that's important to emphasize, but it is about doing what you can to be aware. And it's helped me come from here to here sometimes. And that's actually been really valuable, even though it doesn't seem like the biggest difference on paper.
No, and it strikes me as it's a lot of the lessons that Yoda is trying to impart on Luke in The Empire Strikes Back. You used a lot of quotes. There's a lot of really great illustrations in this book, but you also just have a lot of those kind of core principles of trying to keep your mind in the here and now, not in the future, not always gazing off at the horizon, things of that nature. So
I learned a lot I channeled a lot of my inner Qui-Gon Jinn. Because that moment when he drops down, when he's battling Darth Maul, I always think of that. And it is such on the surface, like, is this when you want to be closing your eyes? And so I don't know, maybe you should just keep, but
I don't think you should sit down now, man. Just
give us the time. But when he pauses and I'm like, that is kind of mindfulness in a nutshell. So thank you, Star Wars. Thank you, Yoda. Thank you, Qui-Gon.
Awesome. And those lessons are really great for adults and for children. I think, just everybody can benefit from thinking about, mindfulness and how it can help us in our everyday lives, as well as how it manifests in Star Wars, which reminds me, we have some new children's books to announce. Katie, you've illustrated numerous adorable books for younger fans, including ABC-3PO, Obi-Wan 2-3, which I'm really fond of, and Creatures Big and Small. With your new book, Galactic Storybook, can you talk about how you tackled covering major events from the entire Skywalker saga for a new generation and a younger audience?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a great thing to be asked. It was like, basically, hi, do you want to take each iconic moment from every single movie in the Skywalker saga and do some illustrations for it? And I mean, I twist my arm. Yeah, of course I'm going to. And I know we pull a few illustrations from a couple other books, but there's so many new ones. And I got to have so much fun, like, basically going like, okay, so this scene, I get to finally do this scene. I get to finally do this scene. I get to draw this scene. And, I've been such a Star Wars nerd since I was a kid that all of a sudden getting to be like, this is the Katie Cook version of all the movies was a big boost to my ego, as well as just the most fun I've had drawing in a long time. So, I mean, I just had a blast doing this one.
Do you have a favorite page or a favorite scene that you've always loved as a fan that you were so excited to put down?
Well, it was actually a scene that is new. It's from Rise of the Skywalker, and it's my 9-year-old daughter's favorite scene, and that's the big chase with the transport loader and the skimmer. Because I got to do all of the big crazy facial expressions. I drew basically Chewbacca almost falling out of the thing, and all the droids are in there, and everybody looks all freaked out, except for Rey, who just looks really determined, and she looks like she is having so much fun piloting this thing, whereas everyone else in the scene is like, what is happening? So yeah, I really love that page. I go back to it as like one of my favorites in the book each time, even though it was so hard to find reference of those things when that movie was not out in iTunes yet.
For everything else, were you just watching and rewatching and trying to get facial expressions?
A little bit, I have the benefit that I live with 2 small children and a husband who all love Star Wars. And I made the joke the other day, because I was working on another book, that I can sit here and, my husband has his like normal job, and I'm sitting here going, what do Mon Calamari eat? And I can just go like, test the room in the house and be like, what do you think they eat? So I live with walking, talking reference from the age of 6 up until people in their 40s. So I don't even need Google at this point.
Nice. And you know what? We don't get nearly enough Star Wars food. I always want to know what they're eating.
Exactly.
I'm curious about this. Katie, you're also working on a new book with our friends over at DK. What can you tell us about Monsters, Ooze, and Slime? Love this title.
That's the reason I was trying to figure out what Mon Calamari eat.
Okay, all right. Secrets revealed.
But yeah, it's, DK basically asked me to write and draw a guide to the most disgusting things in the Star Wars universe. And again, I have a 6-year-old, so this is my jam. And it was like, how else are you're asked about like, oh, I have to sit down and think about the viscosity of Rancor spittle today. So that's interesting. And just everything.
It's a regular Tuesday over at the cookhouse.
Fine. And then I get to draw a picture that goes with it. And it was like, how does Jabba bathe? And it was like, oh, no one wants to know, but I guess I get to write that canon.
I feel like it's a washcloth or a droid with a stick. Just kind of.
Basically, I think it's begrudging acceptance of his minions at this point. But no, it's
folds to get into, just a lot of.
No one wanted to know, but I get to write that. So that's my gift to the Star Wars canon, is all of that stuff that nobody wanted to know about. And
I don't know. I want to know. I really want to know.
And it's fully illustrated, which is, I'm sorry. I apologize right off the bat, because there are pictures. But
I'm really looking forward to that.
My 6-year-old thinks it's funny.
Oh yeah.
So it works.
I know a lot of tiny humans in my own life who are going to be ecstatic about the gross out nature of this.
Yeah, so I had a blast writing the script for it. It was like me and my kids and my husband like sitting down, and I was like, what do you think happens here? And it's like, again, when you have children in the room, they're going to come up with the most disgusting thing. And then I like tone it down like 50%. And that's what ended up in the book.
That's great. So your children are suggesting things and they're like, no, this book is for children. Hang on. We got to just like bring it down a notch, kids.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
a little too gross for a wider audience.
My kids are weird. Like, I'm going to just throw that out right now. So like anything they said, I know is not going to make it through licensing. You got to pull it back.
I love it. I love it. You're the voice of reason here.
Which is terrifying.
Yes. No, we could talk about ooze and slime all day, but I'm gonna just shift gears a little bit to back to Master Yoda, since he's one of my favorite characters and subjects. Preetei, your book celebrating one of the most iconic scenes in Star Wars history, Yoda training Luke on Dagobah, is out this month, correct?
Yes.
So exciting. How does it feel to finally have it out in the world?
It feels great. I think I wrote it a little over a year ago. So it's been a long time, and I'm excited to see it in real life.
Mm-hmm. Now, in the Clone Wars anthology, you wrote about Anakin because you love him so. And in this book, you take a closer look at Luke during his very formative time on Dagobah when he's training. Did you draw any similarities between Anakin and Luke Skywalker from those two writing assignments?
Not as much. I feel like I was kind of writing both things at the same time, but Luke is like, in this picture book, he's like my sweet Babu. He's just like so cute and like sweet. And Mike D's illustration of him is like the cutest thing in the world. So no, not really. He's just like adorable in this book. There's no underlying tension whatsoever.
That's fair. That's fair. Now, if Luke is this adorable, how cute is Yoda in this story?
I can't take it. He's so cute. It like makes me mad. He's so cute. I remember seeing like when they were thinking about having Mike Dees come on and do the art, he had sent over, I guess, like samples of what Yoda might look like. And I was like, oh my God, please hire him. I want to see this whole book the way he does it. And Yoda is just like, he's like your grandpa in this book. He looks like this like little old grandpa who would just like feed you and teach you.
Oh, yeah. He just wants to make you some root leaf stew and tell you about the world. Okay.
Yeah.
It's all Yoda wants.
Yes.
Oh, now other than how cute Luke and Yoda are in this story, during the writing process, did you learn anything new about Yoda and the Force?
I think what was so fun about writing this book is, I'm a sucker for Force lore. I love the concept of it. I find it very tied to my own religion, which is really cool. And so it was neat getting to really live in it for a little while. And like, we were talking about earlier with the mindfulness book, of forcing me to remember things and forcing me to like consider the way that I'm living my life, which was kind of nice. So it wasn't necessarily like learning something new, but really taking what I knew and applying it and reconsidering it from a very like actual real life perspective.
Nice. And I'm sorry, because I know this is probably the toughest question I'm going to ask you, but what's your favorite spread in the book?
Oh, okay. So I'm cheating a little bit because it's 2 spreads, but
we'll allow it.
Thanks. When I was writing it, I remember I had to kind of write and then suggest what I thought the art could look like, which I am not an illustrator. I can't draw at all. It's real bad. So I was like, I don't know, maybe something like this. And there's a spread where Yoda is talking about the Force. And it's one of my favorite parts of the movie when he's recognizes like the Force is in everything. And so on the first spread, you see Yoda and R2 on some rocks, and then Luke on this like huge stack of rocks. And he's telling you that the Force is in everything and that our strength comes from the Force. And then the next page is the same spread, but now you can see the connections of the Force. It's so cool. It's like very, very beautiful.
Oh, that sounds beautiful. All right. Well, I can't wait to see that whole book. All right. And that brings us back to Daniel Jose Older, because Daniel, you're looking a little too comfortable over there right now.
It's just that's my face.
All right. Well, now, Daniel, you're busy writing the High Republic Adventures for IDW, which is coming out in February, which is so soon. What can you tell us about the series?
So it's so much fun. We're dealing with young Jedi. First of all, the great thing about the High Republic is that we get to hang out with Jedi in a time when they're not dead or about to die. So they're not doomed. So we get to really enjoy these people and have a good time with them without being like, oh God, what's going to happen when Order 66? They're going to have.
It's so stressful.
Exactly. So it's like low stress, low impact Jedi hang time. And these particular kids are on kind of like, it's almost like a gap year where they're running around the galaxy with a particular Jedi master who we all know and love. And just having all kinds of adventures in the galaxy, like hands-on Force practice. And of course, terrible things happen and all kinds of disasters are in place. So they have to show up, and the real world really infringes on their fun and their learning as happens. But it really is this turning point in galactic history where these young people are really coming to terms with the new galactic order in a certain way and learning a lot about life and each other and lightsabers and everything else.
Now, I know you can't talk too much about the Jedi in this story, but you're putting together a pretty cool crew of Padawans for the comic. So can you just give us one word or phrase to describe the following heroes? Because I have a super secret list of Padawans, just not the Jedi Masters.
Yes.
All right, first up, we've got Lula.
Lula Talisola, she really wants to be the greatest Jedi in the world. So she's grown up just like in the order, and she aces all her tests. She's incredible at lightsaber combat. She's super smart. She's amazing. I love Lula.
Nice. Farzala.
Farzala is like that mischievous older brother, and he's also like that cat that you have. That's always, he's literally like that cat. I mean, he's a Zygerian, so.
Oh, all right. Definitely going to be my favorite character, obviously. We've also got Quart.
Quart is, like the friend that you have no idea what they're talking about most of the time. That's Quart. Mostly because half the people don't speak his language, and he wears a skull over his head, so no one actually knows what he looks like. But he's a really good friend. He will fight for you and have your back, whatever he's saying in the meantime.
All right. He sounds a little bit scary with the skull on his head, but you know what? Looks can be deceiving.
No, people are scary.
It's fair. All right. And who or what is a Cham Cham? This sounds like a dessert.
Cham Cham. So Cham Cham is his name. His species is a thing. It's an animal called a crew, CRU. Every Cuban aunt has a Chihuahua. All Cubans have an aunt that has a Chihuahua. And you know how Chihuahuas will face off against a rhinoceros, even though you're like, no, don't do it. The Chihuahua's like, oh, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna win. And you're like, that's not a thing. That's not how this works. That's Cham Cham. Cham Cham is Zine's pet. Zine, who we will meet in issue 1 of the IDW. He's like always around. He's cute, but he will kill you and then eat all the parts of you after he's killed you.
All right, I feel very accomplished now because you've given us at least a little bit of information about this series, since I've been asking you now for months, almost a year, just begging. And your IDW comic isn't the only upcoming comic series that we're excited about. So before we go, let's talk a little bit about the other things that we have to look forward to this time of year. Since it is the time of year for ghosts and other creatures of the night, IDW is bringing us Shadow of Vader's Castle, which features terrifying tales from creepy Cabin Scott, a nickname I am totally going to make happen. And we're also getting the new collection Beware Vader's Castle, which collects the first 2 Vader's Castle mini-series along with the free comic book day issue. And speaking of Vader, our favorite Sith Lord, in the Marvel Comics, author Greg Pak is bringing Darth Vader helmet to helmet with Sith assassin Ochi of Bestoon in an arc that connects to the events of The Rise of Skywalker. And later this year, coming in time for Christmas, Paul Duncan and the fine folks at Taschen are going to bring us the Star Wars Archives, episodes 1 through 3. Now, if you have the original trilogy version of the Archives, you know that this book is massive. And in this deluxe behind-the-scenes opus, Paul Duncan is going to dig into the Lucasfilm archives and sit down with none other than George Lucas to revisit the prequel trilogy. This is one that is not to be missed. And if you already own the first one, you can just lift some weights with these 2 because they are massive. And with that, we wrap up another virtual Comic-Con panel. Thank you all for being here today. It was so lovely talking to all of you. And as always, check back on StarWars.com for news on books and comics, including the upcoming stories from the High Republic. Until then, stay safe, thanks for reading, and may the Force be with you.